The moment it seems everyone has been waiting for: curly and textured hair and what to do with it. That's right, this is the video series for that topic. If you don't know who I am, my name is Hallie, also known as the Highlighted Pinup, and I'm going to be doing several videos on this topic to break it down into different segments so you can watch it all at once or revisit things when it's convenient for you, or maybe things that you didn't quite get the first time around. Before we get started into all the different types of topics of like products and things like that, let's go over some fundamentals. To start it off, what is a curl? So there's a lot of different charts and things that people use to describe a curl. And although those things are awesome, like the chart that's like type 2, type 2A, things like that, they never made much sense to me. So as a result, I don't use them. They're great tools, so if you don't have a problem with them, please continue to use them. I'm just going to explain how I understand it the best, and maybe if someone's having problems, they'll be able to understand it a lot better too. So imagine your individual hair strand is like a ladder. And if your ladder looks like this, with all the rungs intact, you probably have straight hair. Boom. Now, when you have a ladder and let's say some of the rungs are broken, maybe something more like that, you probably have hair that looks a little wavy, like so. Then the more rungs broken, the curlier the hair is. Now, the reason I break it down like that is it helps me figure out how fragile the hair actually is. Now, it's not to say that anyone with straight hair doesn't have fragile hair, but across the board, if you do have any sort of texture in your hair, it is more fragile. And that's another reason why I use the broken rung thought, is because you can't just rip through it or do things that you would on someone who doesn't have any texture. It's important when you have a scenario like this that you're building into it and you're giving it a lot of moisture and hydration. So that's just kind of a glossed over way to kind of easily explain how hair works. So when you have multiple rungs that are broken on the ladder, as it dries, it contracts. That's how you get a curl pattern. It's normal to have two different types of curl patterns, or multiple types of curl patterns, on one head. We see that a lot. How you take care of it is pretty much the same. How you treat it with styling, that can be where you break up your products and it gets a little different, and we'll get into all of that later. And then the other one to go over with this is expectations. A lot of times people have really ridiculous expectations of what they think their hair should be, or they're comparing it to someone or something else. And that's why I like to rein that in, and I want to take a moment to talk about it. A big one for me, there is no such thing as bad hair. There's not. You can have a bad follicle. You could ruin it or destroy it with overprocessing. But as far as what your body naturally creates, dispel that myth. It's not bad. It just isn't. It may not be exactly your ideal scenario, but it's not bad. It's not wrong. It doesn't show any value about you as a person or on any fundamental level of who you are. And I always really want to drive that home, because sometimes what happens is people think their hair should be doing something it can't, or they think that a product should do something it shouldn't. So a good example of this is if someone has really fine or thin hair, much like myself, there's not anything I can do that will make it more thick or full. It is what it is. I can trick the eye, I can add densifying products, all of that. But as far as how many strands per square inch of my head come out, it is what it is, and nothing's going to change that. With your thick, coarse hair, a lot of times what we get is it's still thick and coarse, or it's still frizzy. Well, if that's your natural texture, it's not broken. So there are things that you can do to lessen the side effects of having that hair type, but you're never going to fix it, because the problem doesn't necessarily exist in the same capacity you think it does. So keep that in mind with expectations and reining them in. The only things we know that will permanently change texture in the hair, and what I mean by that is not services where that individual strand is affected, but how your body produces hair, is either in a hormonal or chemical change. Examples would be someone who's pregnant. Once they've had their child, a lot of times they lose a lot of hair. It's called postpartum alopecia. It's very common. And in certain cases, it comes back, but it's never the same as it was. That's very normal. It's just that hormone flux and what happens. The other one would be medication or treatment such as chemo. A lot of times when someone loses their hair through chemotherapy or radiation treatments, when it grows back, it is not the same texture that it was before they started treatment. That again is something to be expected. That was a huge toll on your body, and it just changed kind of the makeup of how your cells produce. Another one with the chemo route is it has an endothermic property, so it raises your internal body temperature. It's the leading theory as to why you lose hair, because your scalp actually heats that much and the follicles can't support it. So anytime you have those types of fluctuations, you can expect a permanent result. But aside from that, there's nothing you can do to modify your hair type permanently. The best thing you can do is work with it, try to love it for what it is, and really play around with things and make sure that your expectation level is reasonable so you're not setting yourself up for failure. And much like with anything and everything I talk about, it is a process. Nothing happens overnight. If you have had struggles with your hair for a long time, don't expect it to just all of a sudden be rectified or for you to just embrace it in a matter of days or weeks. A lot of times these things can take upwards of 6 months to a year to really get the hang of it down, to play around with your product and find the best route for you.